Hello everybody and welcome to The Edge Show, History Edition Part 2. Now it's been a while since the first edition came out, and since then there has been a lot of club updates where we were successfully renewed for the fall semester, as well as our membership keeps growing with people looking to do podcasts of their own here at The Edge. In Part 1, we explored the history of The Edge from its early days as WRBU into what we now know as WCBU at Bradley University. The Edge had a tough history with regards to getting funding and listenership, as the organization wasn't really tailored to students anymore. In the late 80s and early 90s, students wanted to have that student radio station back, and while the university couldn't technically have two radio stations, The Edge got by broadcasting locally to Just Campus on the campus telephone system, to cable providers in the area, and on the internet eventually in the late 90s and early 2000s. We have then student and Edge member Dave Lenny, and he is now the faculty advisor and professor here at Bradley with us in the studio again today. And he will be here clarifying and giving his own recount of the history of The Edge and what it was like back in the day when he was a student. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you'd like to learn more about the club, you can join us at edge.bradley.edu, where you can find all our links to join us on Presence and find the rest of our episodes. With that being said, let's jump right into the history. So we talked a lot about WCBU. Now let's move back into the era that WRBU returns. And from my research, I've found that in 1987, a group of students came back and wanted to start up the station again. Do you know a little bit about that time period?
Just before my time.
Okay.
But Tom Richmond, I believe Tom graduated the year that I then started the following August as a freshman, and he immediately took a job with Bradley, and I think was involved in the radio station his senior year. Yeah, and it was going pretty well. My 4 years here, I mean, we're just talking about being 24/7. We were never 24/7, but we had shows from 10 in the morning until typically midnight or 1 a.m. We had a late night. My show was typically late night on a Friday or Saturday. Most years that I did it, most semesters. So yeah, it was really popular, 88 to 92 when I was here. It was, we were always kind of upset if like you came in and it was just silence, like if the person had to leave or something.
Yeah, that was definitely still
and we did
before
sports.
Computers.
I actually found, I'll have to get it to you. Somebody on Facebook posted a link to all of the old yearbooks.
Okay.
And I didn't get a yearbook when I was here, but
I have.
There's stuff about The Edge in some of those, and I found a picture of me with, I think in 90 or 91.
Nice.
With all the people that were involved then, and I forgot that we had a sports director, so he would go and do broadcasts or like little shows and stuff, and talk just all sports.
Nice.
So we had a little bit of everything.
Was this 1987? I think it was running on the old carrier current system at the time, or low power FM, like for just around campus. I can't remember which one it was.
It was definitely not low power FM. That didn't come along until late 90s.
Okay.
And that was essentially an off book,
like a
low power
a Part 15 one type of.
Yeah, it was.
Sort of.
They shouldn't have been doing it. Put it that way. The transmitter that they had was actually. It's not supposed to, if you buy one, it's not supposed to be shipped in this country. Even to find carve out a spot for an illegal transmitter here.
I mean, you're in a big city.
Hard-pressed to do it.
You're in a big city. They're probably going to come find it either way.
And all it takes is complaints.
Yeah, pretty much. And if
they're not going to come looking for you unless somebody complains.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody would complain if you were stepping on a station that they.
At this point, I'd like to throw in a fun quote that you had, that in 1991 the station got a bit of an upgrade, and they upgraded to a new radio console board. So that basically operates the input levels and what music or microphones running at the station. And with an interview with the Scout, you said that with the old board, you'd get stuck. You'd have to run a record next, or you'd have to run this or that. It just makes it a lot easier to sound professional.
The old board was not too far off from what's sitting in front of you. It had a limited number of inputs on it, and it had that has A and B sides, doesn't it? Like
This
it's
one?
got an A input and a B input for each fader. You have
Yes.
multiple
Yep.
things that could be on each fader.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about in there, is that you would kind of like mix your way into a corner where you're playing back something, and then the other thing that you need is on the B side of the same fader.
Of the album.
So then you'd be forced to use a different fader and say, okay, well, what's available here? I could run a cart. I could play a cassette. I could run a record, but I can't run another CD. So the new board that we got, which was not new at all, it was manufactured in like 1970, but it was a beast. It had a zillion inputs on it. It still had like, I think, A, B, C. So it had 3 inputs per pot, but it had a lot of pots. And so we sort of strategically made sure that like all the CD players were on separate pots, so you'd never kind of hit that problem again. And then we put some of like the less used formats on the other side. And again, you know, no computers really. You know, audio on a computer was still not quite there yet in the late 80s, early 90s. So,
but you had like carts, like tape carts and albums. CDs were trying to make their way in at that point,
CDs
or were they already
were pretty well established.
Okay.
Yeah. We actually had pretty nice CD players that they were like cartridges. So you would take the CD out of the jewel case, like when you got it, when we had one shipped to the station, put it in one of these cartridges and put it on the shelf, and essentially you could just slam that thing in without taking it out. So it loaded real quick, and the players only played back one track without going into the next one. And
here's the pictures you showed me.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to look, maybe.
Are you going to show
that.
these?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll cut it like a podcast, and then because I have to put it on YouTube, I'll just throw in a little
video?
slideshow, or if we talk about a photo.
Yeah, so these photos, I took these photos in the fall of '92, which was my super senior year. Yeah, you can see a bunch of tape carts sitting there. The ones that have just a little thin layer of tape might have only been a minute or 30-second cart. That would have been like a station ID or an announcement or something. There's some thicker tape ones that might have had a whole song on them. And the way a tape cart works is just a big loop. So it would play from the start, it would play all the way to the end, and assuming you didn't pop it out early, which some people did, it would just get back to the start again and stop, and then you could pull it out, and it would be ready to play again for the next person.
Was that what was like right in front of the very first thing in front of the camera there? What's that piece of equipment? It's like a box.
That's a cart player. So that was
okay.
We called that the triple cart. It had 3 carts inside it, three separate players, and those went into separate inputs on the board, so you could play stuff. I still have some of them. I had tons of carts that had like just crazy sound effects or quotes from movies and stuff like that my buddy and I would always use.
That's funny. Is that like is there a reel-to-reel in the back right there of that camera? Wow, nice.
Yes, there is a reel-to-reel.
You
That
have
guy's
reels?
manipulating a cassette player. I know that there were a couple. I think the top thing was a CD player. Those cartridge CD players, you can barely see between the turntable and like the microphone stand there and the board. They're kind of sticking out right there. And we had, I think, 2 of those. And then a third one that was more of like an ordinary player. Yeah, it had 2 turntables. Those were kind of on their way out at that point. Not a lot of people used them. But you can see there's a stack of records sitting there.
Yeah. It looks like it's an older like record changer, I think.
Looks like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was in this very room.
Yeah.
It was just turned 90 degrees, so...
And you had like drapes, heavy drapes as the sound dampeners.
I don't know where we got those. It did help. It made it hot and kind of smelly in there. Yeah, some pictures of the CD rack.
The CD rack, that's still here.
That I built, and that's still right behind me.
Obviously, the cassette rack is
no, that's
gone.
carts.
Oh,
Those are
carts. Okay. Yeah.
So,
it's hard to tell.
Yeah. An old terminal.
Old terminal. Yeah, I'm trying to like figure out like what that was.
It was not a computer. It was just
It was on a time sharing system, basically.
It was a modem connected to the network that spat out onto the screen. There was no it couldn't do anything without a connection. What else we got here? That was we were trying to think of this guy's name, who's in the. I think that's either the executive office.
It says it's the executive office.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
There's another like board over there. What was the difference at the time between the executive office and the production office?
The production office was a mess that never really got used for production all that much, and the executive office is like where everybody hung out.
I see.
Yeah, I kept trying to like build something in the production office to where you could like sit and make carts or something, and we just never really had enough stuff to do.
Yeah, I can see it right now. It's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Then there's a view outside of the window.
Yep.
Looking at the student center, it looks pretty much the same, maybe minus the tree.
Oh yeah, that's right. The window that doesn't close. Didn't close then either.
Which one is it? This one?
Yeah, this one right here. Oh no, it couldn't be that one. It has to be one of the other ones.
I think they're fixed now.
Probably this one.
I think
there's still a gap.
There's a gap here, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe the other ones there isn't. Not a fan of that. I did call maintenance, but they said that they'd take a look at it.
We've been saying that for 34 years.
Let's keep going on the roll here. So that year was 1991. The studio received a major overhaul with a computer, radio board, new equipment. Things are going pretty good. At your time, was there any sort of push to get like an actual FM station? Because what were they actually broadcasting on at the time period?
So in my time, we were broadcasting. I would say our main way that people found us was we were the audio for Channel 5 on the campus cable system. So, the late 80s, early 90s, I would say the 90s in general were probably a boom time for cable television. So almost everybody had a TV in their room and they hooked it up to the cable, and we had 30, 35 channels, something like that. And Channel 5 was basically just a loop of real estate ads and a scrolling weather thing and the time and temperature that came from TCI cable, I think is what it was back then. They generated it. And we basically replaced I can't remember what their audio was. I don't know that I ever heard that. But on campus only, it was replaced with our audio, which was interesting because it almost let you compete with television.
Yeah.
People would be flipping around. There were no DVRs or VCRs, I guess.
VCRs, yeah.
People would be flipping around looking for something to watch. They'd stop and hear a song that they liked and go, okay, I'm going to listen to this for a while. So that was like the main way that people found us. We also the FM dial is situated between TV channels 6 and 7. And so it was a pretty easy thing to be able to do what's called cable FM. So you hook your cable TV, which no one understood how to do this.
I read about that. Yeah, no one knew what to do.
You tell them what to do, and they'd be like, "What?" So you take your cable. A lot of people would just like touch it to the antenna of like a boombox or something, and then tune to 99.5. And but that was a frequency that only worked. It's not all that dissimilar from carrier current. Actually, I think there were two cable zones. I think there was a residential and an academic, and we were not on the academic side. Because I remember kind of that was kind of a bummer for me, because when I became the advisor, I could not hear the station.
Oh yeah, what was on the academic side? I'm just curious. What was there? Even anything
on Channel 5? It might have been just whatever the cable company was putting on there.
At least you have cable.
Audio. Yeah, we don't anymore.
No.
So there was that, and then for a while, so this is where it's a little hazy for me, but like,
it's good.
We had a fair amount. We had like a pretty good nest egg that I think somebody donated to us.
Okay.
5 figures. For the purpose of like doing the research to be able to do a low power FM.
Okay.
And kind of like getting all that off the ground. Instead of doing that, we put it away paying for a telco loop connection. So basically high quality phone line that went between us and TCI cable, which is kind of, they're like right behind Channel 31 on University. So right before War Memorial up there. And they put us on cable FM along with 3 other stations, I think, that were on cable FM for the RID said for parts of Peoria. It wasn't all of Peoria. It was only certain areas. So again, it's like, how do you market that? How do you get people like, you know, forget about cutting edge students not knowing how to hook up a cable TV to their radio, but like rank and file Peoria, like no one understood what that meant or how to get us. So, because I remember even on my own show, I would say like, hey, if you're out there in Peoria listening to us, we would love to hear from you. Call us at 345-677-3456, and never had anybody call. Never. So that was like, those were our transmission methods at the time. And then eventually, I think around when I graduated is when we ran out of money to pay for that connection. So then we were just on campus only, Channel 5.
That's rough.
And I don't know at what point, Channel 5 eventually turned into Channel 3, I think around 2000. And it was just, instead of the real estate ads, it was just a shot of a lava lamp.
There was a camera up there, which I've
put
since
that
taken
in
down.
Yeah, that was probably maybe 10 years ago that went in.
Okay.
Because what I pushed for was having not, the lava lamp went away, and they were like, what do you want us to put on in its place? We did a PowerPoint for a while, and I was like, well, why couldn't we just originate video from here? And so we got all that working, and DJs could either put up a PowerPoint or that camera if they wanted to let people see them. And they were on Channel 3. And then right around in there, you know, the internet really took off, and they started doing streaming as well. But yeah, when I was here, it was just that stupid cable FM thing. And but most of our listeners came off of Channel 5. They just turn on their TV.
Yeah, I'd like to show you a snippet from, I think it was a WRBU program schedule of what was actually going on Monday through Sunday. You actually had a classic rock show with Jeff Laird and Dave Lenny, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. on Mondays. It looks like The Edge was playing a variety of music. Like there was, it looks like from 4 to 6, there was like kind of world music, reggae, Latino, British. There's a house and a rap section, rhythm and blues. There's news in the morning or at noon and in the evening. Looks like a couple talk shows and music reports. I don't know if you want to take a look.
Let me take a look. Yeah, I do kind of remember that Monday time slot. So, like,
I don't know what year that was. I didn't get a picture of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know either. What we used to call it was alternative classic rock, so it was like a lot of B-sides and stuff you didn't hear on the radio. And that was sort of the push in general, was to like not, the bad music show. That kind of dates it a little bit. That was a great show. I'm still in touch with both those guys.
That'll be all the music I play.
So that would put this pre-91 because they were both a year older than me.
Okay.
But anyway, the station in general was kind of like, we want to do things that you can't. Oh, Dave Vessel, he's passed away. Yeah. So this is probably pre-1990. But they tried to get us to do things that you didn't hear anywhere else. And so when I pitched the classic rock show, they were like, that's so done. You know, like you can get that anywhere. I was like, yeah, but we want to play like stuff that you don't hear, like deep cuts off the albums and B-sides and stuff like that. And so we did that mainly.
Yeah, it's definitely a turn from what WCBU is, which is just public radio. I mean, this is a totally student-involved and run operation out of Sisson Hall on campus.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. All my shows were late night like that. I don't think we ever did like anything during the day or in the evening.
I can imagine. I'm pretty busy during the day and just the school workload and other activities that go on.
The bad music show for years after I graduated, he would collect bad music. He went to record shops. He lives up in Chicago. And he would put out a CD that he'd sent to a bunch of us every year with his whatever he had acquired that year for bad music. It was just awful stuff. But like it's sort of like so bad it's good kind of thing. Yeah, that's a blast from the past. I would say that's around 1990.
Yep. A few years down the road in 1995, from what I read, there's still a variety of music being played. And during that year, students actually agreed. I don't know if it was like a student senate referendum or like a whole student body referendum. They agreed to have an increase in the activity fee in order to fund the development of like a full-time FM radio station, because at the time they were only running on obviously the campus system you had at the time, which was just television and sort of FM near the
well, and it excluded like all Greek Row, like no one
Right.
off campus could get it.
I think they were at the time, I guess the internet was starting to play a little bit of a role, or digital, but that would still be early on.
Yeah.
But there was a student push to get it, and just everyone basically, although there were referendums, which is, I think that was a pretty big push, because that means it was pretty popular enough to have the student senate involved in actually trying to spur something on. But they were told no at that time, again, that the students weren't just organized enough.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the early days of WRBU's struggles in getting a license. And
That's at least the second time. I mean, maybe the third.
no, that
But
was
there
the
a
second
big
time.
push. Yeah.
Jumping ahead, because the third time was in 2000. Jumping ahead to 1998, that's when WRBU rebranded to just The Edge. While they were still WRBU in some cases, they wanted to just call themselves The Edge because they were looking at the prospects of hopefully having a actual like broadcast license, so they would have to get new call signs, obviously, when that happens. But their name would still be The Edge. A news article at the time said that it will bring the cutting edge of music to BU. I guess that's kind of one of the main questions I had, is just like, why is it called The Edge? And I guess
There
it
you
comes
go.
out a little after your time.
Yeah, it was. And it was kind of after my time as a student, before my time as a staffer.
Right. Yeah, it was in
Kind
that
of in
limbo time.
that area that I'm not.
And that kind of makes sense to what I think looking at the programming was, and what they were trying to do was bringing all types of music together and all different types of students to get involved and just doing different things, because it's a student-run operation.
I think that, and we talked a little bit about what a license takes before. I think this is, hindsight is 2020. Of course, everybody just thinks that the man is pushing you down, like they're not
Right.
going to let you have it. But really what you're asking for there is for for Bradley to, like we talked about, come up and be responsible for the content.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only one way to do that, and that's to have a full-time staffer.
Right. Yeah,
Who-
because
who
what
would work up
what happens
here.
during the summer or when there's a transition?
Well, not even,
You know?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. You'd have to have, yeah, the FCC doesn't like it when you go dark for months at a time.
Right, I can
You
imagine.
need special permission to do that. So, you look at, for example, what Illinois State is doing. They have WZND over there, which is basically like a real commercial station
Right.
that's run, that's mostly staffed by students, but there are full-time staffers that take care of it. I'll ask and find out what they do over the summer and the winter,
Yeah.
to see if they continue to run. I think that those are paid positions too, but it is branded as a student radio station. But
Right.
I would say that I think their format is
It's just pop.
it's just pop.
That's
yeah.
it. I went on there and I looked online, and I don't even think I saw any sort of like talk shows. It was just people and their music. There wasn't any such of a variety.
Yeah. And I don't know if Bradley, like if the administration did any research and said like, let me hear some of the radio station, or maybe asked around and said like, what are they doing on there? Like,
Yeah.
I think there was sort of a general experience or idea that it was just kids kind of screwing around
Yep.
on the radio.
That's what I read, is that there was just a general feeling that it wasn't that organized or professional to really operate fully. And I get it. Running a radio station would be another job,
And
happen.
even if you had all of that stuff kind of handled, which,
Mhm.
the mechanics of it are really not that difficult.
If you had a lot of people, I'm sure it would be easier.
Sure. But,
Yeah.
what if you had just some rogue person who decided to curse on the air? On Channel 5, I mean, they told us not to. Definitely stuff got out. You definitely didn't pay attention to what you were. They always said it's not what you play, it's what you say. So,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
could play music that was not the radio edit that had curse words in it.
Mm-hmm.
But they really didn't want you to curse on it. And some of that was sort of like, let's make sure that our act is cleaned up
Yeah.
so that we're setting a good example for when we want to go broadcast.
Exactly.
But even with a full-time staffer, I don't know how you manage those kind of incidents. Is there a swift system of punishment? I don't know. But ultimately what they were asking for is, okay, you need to pay, probably $100,000 for a construction permit or the research for a construction permit. Probably another $100,000 for the equipment, the transmitter, maybe double that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then ultimately,
it's whatever they give you too. You have to go by the specifications.
Another $70,000 to $100,000 for a full-time staffer with benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a $500,000 investment to it's all clear as day looking back at it now.
Yeah.
But at the time it was just all we want you to do is just sign on the dotted line. It's like going to your parents to co-sign a car loan. No, don't worry about what this is or whether I can afford the payments. Just sign your name. Yeah, but they're going to come after me. So I think that's the way Bradley looked at it. I don't know, right or wrong. That's I'm sure that a good part of that decision was budgetary.
It makes sense.
I don't think they were necessarily wanting to crush anybody's spirit. It was just, no, we can't afford to do that. We already have a radio station.
Yep, that exactly. And in 2000, the FCC rules changed because previously there was that big push to have it owned by the university or operated, but you couldn't because the university already had WCBU. And so in 2000, the students tried to organize again and apply for a low power FM license, which was again denied, citing the same reasons as before.
Yep. And
So
ultimately, given kind of the state of radio today, this was probably all the right decision.
yeah, I think so because, I mean, already WCBU had to move and sort of partner with ISU. So there's already been some struggles over there to keep the format how it already is now. And if you just added a student radio station that also had to basically have the same or, near the same standards as that, I can't imagine it's just, it's too much of an investment for the university to take out.
There was a point where, when demolition of Jobst was getting closer, which they knew was going to happen,
right?
They did not have a place for WCBU to go, and they ended up over in Morgan.
Right.
But like you said, they're partnered with ISU, and it's kind of a much stripped down operation compared to what it was just 10 years ago.
And I visited there early on to just learn more about radio because of how I wanted to do my show before I started looking at the Edge and what we can do here instead. I guess jumping ahead, obviously we know the Edge's history as far as broadcasting is pretty much shut out, but they're still operating for the student interests with technology they have. In 2002, you could tune in from off campus with the internet stream as well as through the cable or FM near there. They actually received an equipment upgrade in 2002. And this technology, along with the computer automation, allowed them to be active 24 hours a day, except they said DJs were usually active 9 to 1 a.m. at the time. I'm guessing the board was probably the one over there. That was the 2002 vintage.
I believe that the donated board from WMBD was in service for about 10 years. So, that was probably that board, and then that board was in service until 4 years ago.
Wow,
3 or 4 years ago, and then
this
one. So
it was actually around either 2002 or 2004. This photo poll asked students, "How often do you listen to the Edge?" And someone said never. Another said none. Another said not often at all. Someone said, "I've listened to it twice because it does not work on my computer." I'm not surprised by that. Another person said once a day at least. And someone named by the name Allison said, I listen to The Edge on TV to fall asleep to because it's boring.
For The Edge.
Poor The Edge. That might have been a little bit like into 2006, maybe. I don't have the exact date. But in 2004, The Edge was again unofficially broadcasting on 98.9 FM on campus. Listenership was dwindling, but it saw success in people just knowing DJs or talk shows and able to tune in based on that. Plus, you had the benefit of being on FM near campus, so you can sort of tune in without having to be in a building. I also read that the sports radio aspect was kind of popular at the time.
I know that like the streaming thing, that's getting close to when I took over as the advisor. So you think about how has streaming changed just in the last 20 years. It changes yearly. Like services come and go. How do you get yourself out there? The big problem that we had here was sort of the transfer of knowledge from one group to the next. There were years where you had like almost a complete turnover at the top level of the station. And then there'd be like, how do we get into our website? How do we...
Right. I've seen that reflected in just internet archives, because at that time, now you can go back and look at what the Edge was like from 2000 to 2010 or so. And you can see, okay, they had like 3 different emails over 10 years.
Yep.
3 different web domains.
Yep. And then the way
struggle.
that they did the streaming kept changing, and it would be down all the time. And then they're like, you'd have somebody like you who'd be really techie and into it and would get it all up and running, and then you would graduate, and then they don't have anybody like that take your place, and then you're like, okay, well, now what? Like, how do we get on the air again? How do we get our stream going? And it was a frustrating time for them. This is probably throughout that whole time they had to pay for music licensing.
I read online that at this time they were trying to get an FCC license to go on FM, but at the same time they were getting hit with a licensing fee for music getting broadcast digitally. It would be $500 a year to get music rights, but then they were gonna putting it in retroactively. It would have been like a $2,000 payment just to cover what you did.
Up current.
To just get you back on track.
Yeah.
That's pretty brutal alone on itself to have to go through that.
Yep.
They were on the internet, TV, and radio on campus still about 2006. There was kind of a push to get some over at St. James, so like they could have service. It wasn't super active at the time as far as listenership, but students enjoyed running it. One Scout article said it doesn't meet students' musical tastes. And obviously, I think this was the same time as this funny poll.
I mean, I don't want to say that's the point, but it is a little bit. The tastes are very, very eclectic. If you want to listen to pop music or classic rock or any of the other big formats, you can listen to one of the commercial stations. And if you want stuff that you've not heard of before, then you're going to come to some place like this. So it's almost like it's built to have, or it was built to have, small audiences.
Exactly.
Or you'd listen because you knew the person who was on the air.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. I think one of the things I'll do, and I don't think it's from this era, I think it was from like late 2010 or 11. I stumbled into a few recordings that on either archive.org or on the internet somewhere of like Edge radio shows, talk shows. I think one's a morning show, one's sort of like a podcast. I think I might include that on our YouTube channel, upload it just to see what.
Did I send you mine?
No, I don't have anything from you.
Okay, I'm going to send you that because I have a ton. I think I mentioned this in one of our email exchanges that the best part about being on the TV was that you could just set a VCR to record your show.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
So I would record them, and I kept all those tapes and got them digitized. So actually, I got the video as well just because that's fun. It's all like houses that were for sale in 1990. I've got probably a dozen shows.
I'm interested in that. I think people would like that as as like a nostalgic factor of the Edge or WRBU at the time.
There was a point where can't remember what happened to Jeff. There was, maybe Jeff graduated, and then I did the show with Rob, this guy Rob Clark, and this is kind of more of the same. He lived one door down from Jeff, so like we were all buddies.
Student radio, you could just go grab a friend and have them be a co-host on your
and
show.
I never wanted to do it by myself, even though it was a music show, and there's kind of no reason that you couldn't do that.
Yeah,
it was just easier to bounce off somebody.
Yeah, and as far as the music taste went on campus, and gaining interest while researching, there was less mention of the Edge in the Scout. There was a lot of mention of the Edge, though, when it came to it partnering with other organizations like Tech Crew, who does audio and video service for organizations on campus. And there was a few like partnerships with, I think, ACBU and Brave Sound Entertainment. And Brave Sound highlights like student artists, and I went to one of theirs in the Student Center Friday, and it was pretty cool. I think people would like to come in here and record, even if it's just for fun or something. And so there was a lot of the Edge getting involved with other organizations and events and trying to get maybe funding for new equipment and stuff. So, there obviously wasn't a big push or big end goal like there was in the 90s, where there was or early 2000s, where there was like this huge push for more money and involvement. So that leads us to kind of where the Edge is today.
Well, there was one other transition point.
Sure.
Go ahead. Which really was one of the final nails in the coffin as far as kind of being a radio entity.
Oh, okay. I know where this is going.
Cable TV went away.
I think that was like 2015.
Yeah.
Right as you got the new board.
Relatively recent. Yeah. That was because of the Beck and Jobst Hall being knocked down, because the cable head end for Bradley is Jobst Hall. So that's the head of the octopus, or was Jobst Hall. Right. That's where Comcast entered campus. And then once Comcast went digital, we actually had to get all this equipment in there to keep it analog, because our infrastructure couldn't support the digital signals, the bandwidth required. So we were paying a lot of money because Comcast had no way to figure out how many jacks were actually in use. So they just charged us for all of them. And it was a lot of money. And they called me in there because at the time we had just started BUTV News, and we were on, we had commandeered one of the cable channels.
Wow.
And they were like, what do you think about not having cable anymore? I'm like, that's fine. I don't think there's many people watching us. And their research indicated that people weren't bringing TVs as much, and it just wasn't really a thing anymore. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to stand in your way. I mean, we were already doing YouTube. I wasn't going to argue. So, yeah. But unfortunately for the Edge, that took away sort of the last sort of live thing that they were doing that was easy to find. And that was unfortunate, but that's sort of what put this place in a tizzy, like as far as not knowing what direction to go. And I had suggested, I remember talking to Tom Richmond at the time, like, what do I do? I don't want it to die, but maybe it's time for it to die. And he said, well, maybe you push him more in the podcasting route, because that's kind of, like that's radio part 2 in a way. So that's where we're at.
There's a big change in how people are listening to music and podcasts, because if you think back to 2015, that's kind of like when I got my first phone. I wasn't listening to music on my phone. Now everybody's listening to music. Everyone's got, AirPods in, walking around campus. And, people are listening to podcasts on their commutes to work or something of that nature. So there's, I think, a shift in how people are listening to music, especially now that we have music for almost nothing streamed directly to our phone or downloaded to it. And so that leaves the Edge in a weird place, because at our meeting, we had a lot of people that are like, oh, yes, I want to do podcasts. I want to help. I want to learn. This seems cool. I have cool ideas. And then there's also some people that want to do music. And I think it's more people that want to play music that they know or like, and want other people to also experience it. it's a little interesting. So like there's like half of the people that we can do podcasts for them right now and help them get started, and then there's the people that want to do music or broadcasting, and I'm trying to think of like a good way we can help those people out too, because I think that's cool. You know, maybe you can find something new, or maybe you can come and hang out with your friends and do a radio show for like an hour of whatever music you want. So I think there's students that want to get involved with that, and we've doubled our membership from about 10 people to 21 people in the past week. People have been trickling in saying, hey, I want to get involved to maybe do a podcast or something else. So I think it's a neat organization that people want to get involved in. And so that might be along the lines of definitely podcasts, which we can make, and we're working on right now. That's sort of my goal, to help those people with that. And what do you think, Dave? What do you think about music? The Edge's original.
I think it's just
Cool.
tough to like get a foothold in that world. You know, it's like walking into an extremely crowded room and trying to make yourself heard.
Right.
I mean, like, to me, like what people are describing is like, to use a very sort of dated example, it's like making a mixtape. You put together a bunch of music that you like onto a tape and you hand it to a friend. Like, if that's the kind of thing that they want to do, maybe the better way to do it is in the podcast format, is like sort of try to build an audience and say like, hey, it's new music day, and you'd have to figure out exactly. That's the other thing, is like anything with music these days, it's just such a prickly thing to get involved with because of the licensing. You guys are posting stuff on YouTube, which is great. YouTube can sense that content, and a lot of times all it does is just says you can't monetize it, which is fine. And we didn't want to monetize it.
Yeah, we don't want to make money off of it right now.
But every so often you hit a cut that says we need to blank this out, and you just have no idea what's going to trigger that.
Right.
And that's really frustrating. I maybe 10 years from now it'll be a much better situation, but there's just so many different deals with all these different companies.
Yeah.
That make it very complicated for people to do what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even if all you played was like little short snippets, you might still trigger it.
I might still trigger it, and the worst thing that could happen would be the video gets taken down and you get a strike on the channel, which could last up to like 9 months or a year or something.
Yeah.
And then you have limitations on your channel, in which for the Edge that would be rough. Or the least would be like you said, just it's monetized, but for someone else.
But not for you. Yeah.
Not for me.
Yeah. No. And we deal with that on BUTV all the time as well. We air PSAs for breaks, and those PSAs are available to anyone who wants public service announcements. And there is a soccer league in particular that they air PSAs as breaks, and then they lay claim over their whole broadcast as being copyrighted to them, and it includes those PSAs. So every time we air our show, we get content matches to them, and I actually copy and paste it from a document. I wrote it all out. And it's gotten more and more snarky. I don't know if anybody is reading it or not, but I basically say these PSAs are for everybody. They do not belong to them. We are just as legit to air them. And, I think the result is still the same, that it can't be monetized, which I don't really care. We're not doing that. But it irritates me that I have to deal with that on a semi-weekly basis. And then we have a handful of PSAs, which I don't understand why they did it this way, but like there's one PSA that used a cut from The Truman Show, the soundtrack.
That's gonna get flagged.
And it gets flagged because of that. So I had to, pull that PSA from our run. It's a really good one. I think it's got John Cena in it, but it's a really nice. And of course, the music can put something over the top, and it was a really nice PSA. But it's like, I'm not going to deal with that.
That's just such a weird weird YouTube problem, and other content hosting platforms have that same problem, and that's rough. And then the content ID system they have, where it flags the whole video, even if it's just a little snippet of a PSA. That's rough, especially for creators that actually have to make money. But you can't make
And that's
money
the
off
thing
of
too, is
copyrighted
like
music.
these guys are all, they're creating what is essentially free content for us to watch.
Yeah, I
in
know, that's
exchange
what's
for the
weird.
eyeballs that look at those ads.
It's just like you think they have all this money to make a sophisticated system that could, detect that or
Yeah.
manually check it out, but they don't. It's just the same for everybody. I actually made $10 from YouTube because I used to make gaming videos.
Oh.
And I don't really know how to get that money out. It's locked in there.
Yeah. I've always
fine.
thought about doing something. I feel like I do interesting things sometimes, but it's just, you gotta, the step from 0 to 1 is much harder than from 1 to 10.
You'd be surprised when people stream these days. There's one guy on Twitch, and he does like audio. He does like high-end audio reviews, and his Twitch streams is just him with a GoPro on his head, and he never shows his face, and he just walks around his house and does stuff. Maybe he preps for the next audio equipment review or, headphone review, or he makes food and eats it, and then he just talks and interacts with chat. That's mostly it, is him interacting with chat and what he does. So, I mean, you'd be surprised what people put out there.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I don't see us trying to be as formal as what The Edge is trying to be really early on. I think that if we do, maybe some podcasts would be pretty formal, but if we ever do like music or radio or talk, this is like kind of a no pressure club, because we want to get people involved and, to try this out and see, how far they can take it and have some sort of impact on it. Like we'll be able to train you and show you what to do, and we'll have a code of conduct. So, there's some guidelines that you need to follow if you're in here working with us. But yeah, we're excited to, to do stuff with The Edge. So
I'm excited that you wanted to do it, because
yeah.
As I told you before, it was very, very close to death. There was nobody to re-register it for this school year, and I just wasn't sure what to do. And I had already talked to Kara about just letting it go. And she said, okay, well, let me know if something changes. And then along comes Ben.
Not so fast, yeah. And there's other people that want to do it too. So
all these organizations up and down the hall, and all the ones that don't have offices.
I was talking in our group chat, and there's someone that wants to interview student organizations as part of the Edge show, I think.
That'd be great.
So I'm like, hey, yeah, you can do it.
And then each one of those organizations would put it on their site and reach out to their people.
Yeah, social media is big now. I think that'll help with distributing what the Edge does,
I can tell you, so I started BUTV News new when I took over as faculty in the fall of 2015.
Okay.
And it is only just now getting to the point where people know who we are. They know that there is a student newscast. We get people that watch it regularly. The administration knows who we are. We're not a joke anymore. It takes a lot of effort into kind of being consistent and branding yourself that way for years to get to that point. So it might be something that happens after you're gone.
Right. Yeah.
But hopefully you can pass the baton on. I wish that I had probably maybe had a heavier hand when they were figuring out how to do the podcasting thing and get into directories and stuff, because I feel like what they ended up doing was it cost so much money and they got almost nothing out of it. So I should have just pushed them towards doing what you're doing, which is
on YouTube.
Put it on YouTube or even just the free version of what they were doing. But they had already done it. So
but yeah, I'd like to see it go somewhere. And with that being said, we've been here an hour and a half. We had a great conversation.
Yeah.
You got class to go to. I do too in an hour. And so I'd like to thank you so much for coming out, Dave. That's it for our history editions of The Edge Show. Thank you so much for listening, and big shout out to Dave Lenny for coming by and giving us his history on the club and everything that he knows has been so useful for this project. I'd also like to thank the library for helping me gather some early articles from various newspapers and publications that mentioned WRBU or The Edge. Archive.org for having the websites archived, and as well as having versions of the Scout archived and searchable. And lastly, the YouTube audio library is where we got some of our music from. So if you're looking to join The Edge in any capacity, please go to our website, edge.bradley.edu, to learn more. And you can also go to our presence page at bradley.presence.io and request to join The Edge or send us an email, and we'll get right back to you. So with that being said, thank you for listening to The Edge. This is Ben, signing off. Goodbye.